I helped a stranger with his bags, but his confession changed my day. It started on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day that drifts by unnoticed, like a leaf carried by a gentle breeze. I was at the local coffee shop, nursing my usual order, an oat milk latte, while scrolling through emails that felt more like obligations than communications. The air was thick with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. It was a comforting cocoon, one I often retreated to when the world outside felt too chaotic that as I sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling of restlessness that had been gnawing at me for weeks. My job at the marketing firm had become monotonous, and family gatherings were filled with well-meaning questions about my love life that only served to deepen my sense of isolation. I wanted something more, something real. And yet, I felt trapped in a cycle of routine and expectation. That's when he entered with an effortless grace that caught my attention immediately. Tall and lean, with tousled dark hair that framed his face just right, he exuded a quiet confidence. His voice was warm and inviting as he ordered his drink, and I found myself stealing glances at him, intrigued by the way he interacted with the barista, a playful banter that made me smile despite my own gloomy thoughts that I couldn't help but notice how he juggled two heavy bags as he turned to leave. They looked cumbersome, and without thinking, I stood up and approached him. "Do you need help with those?" I asked, my voice slightly shaky from the unexpected boldness. He paused, surprise flickering in his eyes before a grateful smile broke across his face. "That would be amazing, thank you." His voice was even more captivating up close, rich and melodic. As I took one of the bags from him, our fingers brushed briefly, a spark of electricity that sent a thrill through me that we walked side by side down the street, the weight of the bags lightened by our conversation. His name was Alex, and as we talked about everything from favorite coffee blends to our mutual love for late-night movies, I felt a connection forming, a thread weaving us together in this moment. But beneath the surface of our easy chatter lay an undercurrent of tension. I could sense it in the way he occasionally glanced at me, as if gauging my reaction to something unspoken. There was a depth to him that intrigued me, a hint of vulnerability masked by his charming demeanor that as we reached his apartment building, he turned to face me, his expression shifting from casual friendliness to something more serious. "You know," he began slowly, "I've been having a rough time lately." His gaze dropped to the ground for a moment before meeting mine again. "I lost someone important to me not long ago." The air around us thickened with unspoken emotions. My heart raced as I processed his words. This wasn't just a chance encounter anymore. There was weight in what he shared, an invitation to delve deeper into his world. "I'm really sorry to hear that," I replied softly, feeling an urge to comfort him despite knowing we had just met. "If you want to talk about it," he shook his head gently but smiled faintly. "Not yet. Maybe another time." There was something in his eyes, an unguarded moment where vulnerability peeked through, and it struck me how quickly we had connected that we stood there for a moment longer, caught in an invisible web of possibilities and unspoken words. The world around us faded into a blur as I realized how much I wanted to know him better, to explore this unexpected connection that had sparked between us. "Can I see you again?" The question slipped out before I could stop myself. It felt bold yet necessary. There was something about Alex that made me want to reach out and hold on tight. His smile widened at my inquiry, lighting up his face in a way that made my heart leap. "I'd like that," he said softly. "Maybe we can grab coffee again sometime?" As we exchanged numbers, my hands trembling slightly, I felt an exhilarating rush of hope mixed with uncertainty. The promise of what could be hung heavy in the air between us as we said our goodbyes. Walking away from him felt surreal. My mind buzzed with thoughts and emotions swirling like leaves caught in a whirlwind. For the first time in what felt like ages, I sensed a flicker of excitement igniting within me, a yearning for connection that had been dormant for too long. Little did I know that this chance encounter would unravel into something far more complex than either of us anticipated. The beginning of a journey filled with emotional depth and unexpected revelations that would change both our lives forever. The next few days passed like a dream, each moment tinged with the anticipation of seeing Alex again. I replayed our brief encounter in my mind, savoring the warmth of his smile and the way his laughter danced through the air. We texted sporadically, our conversations light, yet charged with something deeper, an unspoken promise that lingered just beneath the surface that on Friday, we finally arranged to meet for coffee again. I arrived at the cafe early, nerves fluttering in my stomach as I took a seat by the window. The familiar scent of roasted beans enveloped me, but today it felt different, charged with excitement and a hint of anxiety. What if he didn't feel the same spark? What if this was all in my head? As I waited, I couldn't shake off the nagging voice in my mind that reminded me of my insecurities. I had always been the nice guy, the one who blended into the background at social gatherings, never quite daring to step into the spotlight. My friends often teased me about my romantic misadventures, but deep down, I craved something real, a connection that transcended superficial attraction. When Alex finally walked in, my heart raced. He looked even better than I remembered, dressed casually in a fitted navy shirt that accentuated his lean frame. He spotted me immediately and waved, his smile lighting up the room. It was infectious. I couldn't help but return it. "Hey there," he said as he approached, his voice warm and inviting. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." "No worries," I replied, trying to sound casual despite the butterflies in my stomach. "I've been enjoying the ambience." We ordered our drinks, his usual cappuccino, and settled into a cozy corner booth. The conversation flowed easily at first, filled with laughter and playful banter as we shared our favorite movies and guilty pleasures. Yet beneath the surface of our lighthearted exchange lay an undercurrent of tension that neither of us acknowledged. As we sipped our drinks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shift between us. It was in the way Alex's gaze lingered on me a moment longer than necessary, or how our knees brushed beneath the table, a fleeting touch that sent shivers down my spine. Then it happened, a moment of vulnerability that caught me off guard. As we discussed our childhoods, Alex's expression turned serious. "You know," he began hesitantly, "growing up wasn't easy for me. I always felt like I had to hide who I really was." My heart ached at his words. There was a raw honesty in his voice that resonated deeply within me. "I get that," I replied softly, feeling an unexpected kinship with him. "I've struggled with that too." He looked up at me, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Really? How so?" I took a deep breath, weighing my words carefully. I've always felt pressure to conform, to fit into this mold of what everyone expects from me. My voice dropped slightly as I continued. Coming out wasn't just about revealing my sexuality. It was about confronting all those expectations. Alex nodded slowly, and for a moment, silence enveloped us, a comfortable pause that felt charged with understanding. It was as if we were peeling back layers of ourselves, revealing vulnerabilities we rarely shared with anyone else. "I think it's brave," he said finally, his gaze steady and sincere. "To be true to yourself is one of the hardest things to do." There was something profound in his words, an acknowledgement of the struggles we both faced. But just as quickly as that connection deepened, an invisible barrier seemed to rise between us. The weight of unspoken fears settled heavily on my shoulders. What if he didn't see me as more than just a friend? What if this moment of intimacy only highlighted how different we truly were? I could sense a shift in Alex, too. His expression grew contemplative, as if he were grappling with his own thoughts and fears. The air around us thickened with unspoken words and possibilities left unexplored. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly, breaking the silence but still sounding hesitant. "Of course," I replied, my heart racing again. "What are you looking for?" His question hung in the air between us like a fragile thread waiting to snap. I swallowed hard, caught off guard by the directness of it all. What was I looking for? A part of me wanted to say love, to find someone who understood me completely, but another part hesitated at the thought of vulnerability. "I guess I'm looking for someone who gets it," I finally admitted, feeling exposed yet relieved to voice what had been swirling in my mind. "Someone who understands what it's like to feel out of place." Alex studied me for a moment before nodding slowly. "I think we're both searching for that," he said softly. Just then, a loud group of friends burst into the cafe, their laughter cutting through our intimate moment like a knife. The sudden noise jolted us back to reality. It felt like a reminder of everything outside this bubble we had created, a world filled with distractions and expectations that as they settled nearby. Alex's demeanor shifted slightly. He leaned back in his seat and crossed his arms defensively. The warmth from earlier dissipated into uncertainty as he glanced away from me toward the bustling cafe. "Do you want to get out of here?" he asked abruptly, his tone shifting from open to guarded that I hesitated for a moment before nodding. Something told me we needed space away from prying eyes and loud laughter. Time to explore this connection without distractions or societal pressures looming over us, that we left the cafe together and wandered down the street aimlessly at first, my heart pounding with anticipation and anxiety as we walked side by side under the soft glow of streetlights. The atmosphere felt electric. Every brush of our arms sent sparks through me. Eventually, we found ourselves at a small park tucked away from the main road, a quiet oasis where trees swayed gently in the evening breeze and shadows danced playfully on the ground beneath our feet. "Let's sit here," Alex suggested, gesturing toward a bench nestled beneath an old oak tree as we settled down together, our knees almost touching once more. I could feel tension crackling between us like static electricity, waiting to ignite into something more profound, something beautiful yet terrifying. "Do you ever feel like there's so much left unsaid?" Alex asked suddenly after a long pause that I nodded slowly. His question resonated deeply within me. "All the time," I admitted softly. "It's like there are these walls we build around ourselves." He looked at me intently, then leaned closer, as if sharing a secret only meant for us. "Sometimes I wonder if breaking those walls is worth it." My breath caught in my throat as our eyes locked, his gaze searching mine for answers that neither of us had yet found. In that moment, everything else faded away. The noise from outside vanished into silence as we sat there suspended in time. But just as quickly as it began to feel intimate again, doubt crept back into my mind. The fear of rejection loomed large over us like an ominous cloud threatening rain on what could have been a sunny day. What if he wasn't ready? What if opening up only pushed him away? The question spiraled through my thoughts like wildfire as I battled against my growing insecurities, the need for connection clashing against self-doubt. "I should probably get going," Alex said suddenly after another heavy silence fell between us and my heart sank at his words. It felt like an abrupt end to something beautiful, yet fragile. A connection still teetering on the edge between friendship and something more profound. "Yeah, okay," I replied quietly, fighting against disappointment rising. Within me, we stood up from the bench together under dimming twilight skies filled with stars beginning to twinkle above us. An unspoken understanding lingered in the air between us. A promise yet unfulfilled, but hanging delicately on threads woven tightly by shared vulnerability and longing still left unexplored. With one last lingering look exchanged before parting ways, I couldn't shake off how much had shifted within me since meeting him. The uncertainty still loomed large, but now accompanied by hope glimmering faintly beneath layers built over years spent hiding behind walls erected out of fear and doubt. Maybe this was just the beginning, an inciting incident leading towards something far greater than either one of us anticipated. The start of an emotional journey filled with twists and turns, yet waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. The days following our coffee date unfolded like a series of beautifully crafted moments, each one deepening the connection I felt with Alex. We texted frequently, our messages filled with playful banter and shared memes that made me laugh out loud, often drawing curious glances from my coworkers. Each ping of my phone sent a thrill through me, a reminder that someone out there was thinking of me. One Saturday afternoon, he suggested we visit a local art exhibit that had just opened downtown. "It'll be fun," he texted, complete with a smiley face. I hesitated for only a moment. My heart raced at the thought of spending more time with him. "I'm in," I replied, excitement bubbling within me. When we met outside the gallery, the sun bathed everything in golden light, and I couldn't help but admire how the rays highlighted the contours of his face. He wore a fitted black jacket that accentuated his frame and paired it with dark jeans, effortlessly stylish yet comfortable. As he approached, his eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Ready to get cultured? He teased, nudging my shoulder playfully. Absolutely. I laughed, feeling the warmth of his presence wash over me as we entered the gallery together. Inside, the atmosphere was vibrant yet serene. The walls were adorned with striking pieces of modern art, bold splashes of color and abstract shapes that invited interpretation. I felt a rush of inspiration as we wandered through the exhibit, our conversations flowing easily between us. Look at this one, Alex exclaimed, pointing to a large canvas filled with swirling blues and greens. It's like the artist captured the ocean's chaos and beauty all at once. I stepped closer to examine it, feeling the textured brushstrokes beneath my fingertips. It's mesmerizing. I agreed, glancing at him to find his gaze fixed on me instead of the painting. There was something electric in that moment. His eyes held a depth that made my heart race. As we moved from piece to piece, we began to share stories about our own artistic endeavors, or lack thereof. Alex revealed he had dabbled in painting during college, but had put it aside after graduation. I always felt like I was just playing at it, he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. Why not pick it back up? I asked gently, sensing the passion still flickering within him, that he shrugged, looking away for a moment as if lost in thought. I guess I've always been afraid no one would take it seriously. There was vulnerability in his admission that resonated deeply within me. I understood that fear all too well. Art is subjective, I said softly, stepping closer to him. What matters is how it makes you feel. He turned back to me then, and for a heartbeat, everything else faded away. The bustling crowd around us dissolved into mere background noise as we stood there locked in each other's gaze. You're right, he said finally, a hint of determination creeping into his voice. Maybe I should stop worrying about what others think. We spent hours exploring the gallery, laughing over quirky installations and debating the meanings behind various pieces. At one point, we stumbled upon an interactive exhibit where visitors could contribute their own artwork on large blank canvases. Without hesitation, Alex grabbed some paintbrushes and pulled me toward it. Let's do this, he said excitedly, that I hesitated briefly, my inner critic whispering doubts about my artistic abilities. But his enthusiasm was infectious. We set to work side by side, splattering colors onto the canvas with reckless abandon. Laughter filled the air as we playfully competed to see who could create the most outrageous design. That as our hands brushed against each other while reaching for paint or leaning in closer to see what the other was doing. I felt an undeniable spark, a connection that went beyond friendship and flirtation. The warmth of his skin against mine sent shivers down my spine. Every touch ignited something deep within me. Afterward, we stepped back to admire our chaotic masterpiece. A riot of colors that looked more like a battle than art, but encapsulated our shared joy perfectly. This is something, I chuckled, wiping paint off my hands onto my jeans. It's beautiful, Alex replied earnestly, his gaze lingering on our creation before shifting back to me. Just like this day. The sincerity in his voice made my heart flutter. There was something so genuine about him that drew me in like gravity pulling at an object in orbit. Later that evening, we found ourselves sitting on a park bench under a starlit sky, our laughter still echoing from earlier as we recounted silly moments from our day. The cool breeze rustled through the trees around us while fireflies danced in the air like tiny stars come down to earth. Do you remember when you tried to paint that ridiculous sun? Alex asked between chuckles that I groaned playfully at the memory. Hey, it was an abstract sun. It had layers. He laughed harder then leaned back against the bench, his profile illuminated by moonlight, a sight so captivating it took my breath away for a moment. The intimacy of this shared experience enveloped us like a warm blanket. I felt safe here with him under this vast expanse of night sky. As silence settled between us again, a comfortable pause filled with unspoken words. I couldn't help but steal glances at him. My heart raced as thoughts swirled in my mind. Was this what falling for someone felt like? The thrill mixed with fear made every moment feel heightened and alive. But just as quickly as joy surged within me, doubt crept back into my mind. What if this connection was fleeting? What if he didn't feel as strongly? The fear of rejection loomed large again like an unwelcome shadow, threatening to darken everything we'd built together so far. Alex, I began hesitantly after gathering my courage. Can I ask you something? Of course, he replied softly, turning toward me with genuine interest etched across his features. What are you looking for? The question echoed back to our previous conversation, this time laden with more weight than before as vulnerability seeped into every word spoken between us. He took a moment before responding. Uncertainty flickered across his face before he spoke again. Honestly, someone who understands me, someone who can see past all those walls. His gaze held mine steadily, no longer guarded but open and sincere, and it sent warmth flooding through me. I think we're both searching for that, I confessed quietly, my heart pounding against my rib cage as anticipation built within me once more. The air between us crackled with unspoken possibilities. It felt like standing on the precipice of something monumental. An emotional cliff waiting patiently for us to leap together into unknown depths below filled with promise, yet untold stories waiting. Patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. Just then, a loud burst of laughter erupted from nearby picnickers breaking through our intimate moment. But instead of feeling disrupted by it, I found myself laughing along with Alex again. The tension dissipating in a playful teasing once more as we exchanged silly impressions of what they might be discussing over their spread of snacks laid out on blankets nearby. As night deepened around us, the stars twinkling brightly above, we continued talking. Late into the evening, sharing secrets about ourselves interspersed with lighthearted jokes, keeping everything balanced between moments filled with emotional intensity mixed seamlessly into laughter echoing softly around us, creating memories woven tightly together by threads spun from joy and vulnerability alike. When it finally came time for us to part ways, I felt an ache in my chest, a mixture of longing and excitement swirling within me, but also fear creeping back and again threatening to overshadow everything we'd built thus far together. Yet despite those fears, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, I wanted him in my life for better or worse, because somehow amidst all those uncertainties, I felt more alive than ever before just being near him. The following week felt like an eternity, each day stretching out as I waited for another chance to see Alex. Our texts continued to flow, filled with playful exchanges and deeper conversations, but I could sense a shift in the air between us, an unspoken tension that crackled like static electricity. I found myself replaying every moment we had shared, analyzing our interactions for signs of what he truly felt. Finally, we decided to meet up for dinner on Friday night at a cozy little Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. As I arrived, the warm glow of candlelight spilled onto the sidewalk, creating an inviting ambience that set my nerves on edge. I was both excited and terrified. Tonight felt different. It felt like the night when everything could change. When Alex walked through the door, my breath caught in my throat. He wore a fitted gray sweater that hugged his frame perfectly, and his hair fell just right, messy yet effortlessly charming. His smile lit up the room as he spotted me, and I couldn't help but smile back, feeling a rush of warmth spread through me. "Hey there," he greeted me as he approached the table. "You look great." "Thanks." "You too," I replied, my cheeks flushing slightly under his gaze as we settled into our seats, and the conversation flowed easily at first, discussing our weeks, sharing funny anecdotes about work, and teasing each other about our culinary preferences. But as we moved through our meal, I felt an undeniable shift in the atmosphere around us. The laughter faded into something more profound, a charged silence filled with unspoken words and lingering glances that as we finished our pasta, I glanced around the restaurant, noticing couples whispering sweet nothings to each other and stealing soft kisses across tables adorned with flickering candles. The sight ignited a longing deep within me, a desire to bridge the gap that had formed between Alex and me. "Do you want to take a walk?" I suggested suddenly, feeling restless in my seat. "Sure," he replied, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. We stepped out into the cool night air, the sounds of the city enveloping us as we wandered aimlessly down the street. The stars twinkled above like tiny diamonds scattered across velvet, and I could feel the tension building between us with each passing moment. That as we strolled along the sidewalk, our shoulders brushed against each other with every step, a gentle reminder of how close we were yet how far apart we still felt. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye, catching him looking back at me with an intensity that made my heart race. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly, breaking the silence that had settled around us. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fluttering in my chest. "What are you really feeling right now?" His question hung in the air between us like a fragile thread waiting to snap that I hesitated for a moment. Vulnerability washed over me like cold water. "Honestly, I'm scared," I admitted quietly. "Scared of what this is, scared of what it could be." He nodded slowly, his expression softening as he stepped closer to me. "I feel it too," he confessed softly. "There's something between us, something real, but it's terrifying." In that moment of honesty, everything shifted. The walls we had built around ourselves began to crumble as we stood there under the stars, two souls laid bare before one another. "I don't want to hide anymore," I said suddenly, my heart pounding in my chest as I took a step closer to him. "I want to know what this is, what we are." His gaze held mine steadily. There was a flicker of hope in his eyes that ignited something deep within me. "Me too," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. The world around us faded into silence as we stood there, our hearts racing in unison as if they were beating out a rhythm only we could hear. The anticipation hung heavy in the air. It felt like everything was leading up to this moment, the culmination of all our shared laughter and vulnerability. Without thinking, I reached out and brushed my fingers against his hand, a tentative touch that sent sparks shooting through me. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his palm upward and intertwined his fingers with mine, a simple gesture that felt monumental. "Can I kiss you?" I asked softly, my voice trembling slightly at the weight of my words. He looked into my eyes for a long moment before nodding slowly, his gaze unwavering as if searching for any hint of hesitation within me. "Yes," he breathed out softly. Time seemed to stand still as I leaned in closer, my heart racing wildly as our lips finally met in a tentative kiss filled with uncertainty yet laced with longing. It was soft at first, gentle exploration as if we were both testing the waters. But soon enough it deepened into something more passionate, a connection igniting between us like wildfire. His lips were warm against mine, every brush sending waves of electricity coursing through my body, and all those fears melted away in that instant. The kiss was everything I had hoped for, tender yet fervent, an unspoken promise hanging between us that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed, I couldn't help but smile at him. Joy bubbled up inside me like champagne fizzing over after being shaken too hard. "That was," Alex started but trailed off as if searching for words to encapsulate what had just happened between us. "Incredible," I finished for him, grinning from ear to ear. That he laughed softly, then reached up to tuck a stray hair behind my ear, a simple gesture that sent shivers down my spine. "I've wanted to do that since our first coffee date," he admitted shyly. My heart soared at his confession. It felt surreal knowing he had been feeling this way too. This connection we shared wasn't one-sided after all. "Me too," I replied softly, feeling vulnerable yet exhilarated by this newfound intimacy between us. But just as quickly as joy surged within me again, a shadow flickered across Alex's face. Uncertainty crept back into his expression like an unwelcome guest crashing our moment together. "What's wrong?" I asked gently, sensing his shift in mood instantly, that he sighed deeply before speaking again. This is all so new for me." His voice trembled slightly, raw honesty spilling forth like water from a cracked dam, and it made my heart ache for him even more than before. "I get it," I reassured him softly. Reaching out again, I took his other hand into mine, squeezing gently, hoping to convey comfort through touch alone. "It's new for me too." He looked down at our intertwined hands, then back up at me, his expression softening once more, as if realizing how much strength lay within vulnerability shared between two people willing to embrace uncertainty together rather than shy away from it altogether. "What if this doesn't work?" I blurted out suddenly, the words spilling forth unbidden. the fear clawing its way back into focus, threatening everything, still waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. What do you mean? His brow furrowed slightly. A mix of concern etched across features once so bright, now clouded by shadows creeping back into view, threatening joy built upon foundations shaky at best. I mean, what if your family doesn't accept me? What if mine never comes around? My voice trembled slightly, betraying vulnerability laid bare before him, now exposed completely amidst everything still unresolved, lingering heavily around us, both like smoke from extinguished fireworks, fading away, leaving only ashes behind. He sighed deeply, then reached out, taking both my hands into his, squeezing gently, hoping comfort would convey strength through touch alone. We sat there locked in silence for several moments, letting emotions wash over us both until finally breaking through. Layers built up around hearts entwined tightly amidst swirling uncertainties, still waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. We'll figure it out, he said firmly, finally breaking silence, wrapping warmth around every word spoken between us, now resonating deeply within both our hearts, entwined tightly amidst swirling emotions surrounding everything unfolding before us. And so we sat there under dimmed lights, holding onto each other tightly, the world outside fading away once more as we embraced not only this moment, but everything yet waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. As the weeks passed, the tension between my relationship with Alex and my family's expectations simmered in the background, a constant reminder of the challenges we faced. I found myself wrestling with my fears, but I also realized that every moment spent with Alex brought me closer to understanding who I was and what I truly wanted. Point one evening, after a particularly difficult day at work where I had overheard whispers about my relationship with Alex, I returned home feeling defeated. The weight of disapproval from both my colleagues and my family pressed heavily on my chest. I sank onto the couch, staring blankly at the television screen, when my phone buzzed with a message from Alex. "Hey, want to come over? I made dinner." Smiling face with smiling eyes. I hesitated for a moment, battling the urge to retreat into my shell. But then I remembered his smile, the warmth of his hand in mine, and how alive I felt when we were together. "I'll be there," I replied, pushing aside my doubts. When I arrived at his apartment, the comforting aroma of garlic and herbs enveloped me as soon as I stepped inside. Alex stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up when he heard me enter, and his face broke into a grin that chased away some of my lingering worries. "Hey, just in time for the best pasta you'll ever have," he declared playfully. "Is that a challenge?" I teased back, feeling lighter already though we settled at his small dining table. And as we shared dinner, twirling pasta around our forks and laughing over silly stories, I felt a sense of normalcy returning. But beneath that comfort lay an undercurrent of unresolved tension. It was time to confront what had been hanging over us for far too long. "Alex," I began hesitantly, setting down my fork. "Can we talk about everything?" His expression shifted slightly. He nodded, setting his own fork down as he leaned forward, giving me his full attention. "Of course. I've been thinking about how things went with my family," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, "and how much their opinions weigh on me." "I get that," he replied softly. "It's hard when people you care about don't understand or accept who you are." I took a deep breath, feeling vulnerable yet determined. "I don't want to hide you from them anymore. You mean too much to me for that." His gaze held mine steadily. There was a flicker of hope in his eyes that ignited something deep within me. "So what are you saying?" he asked cautiously. "I want to introduce you properly," I said firmly. "Not just as a friend, but as someone special in my life." A smile broke across his face, a mixture of relief and joy that made my heart swell. "Are you sure? It might not go well." "I know," I admitted, "but hiding you away isn't an option anymore. You deserve better than that." We spent the rest of the evening discussing how we would approach it, how to frame our relationship in a way that felt authentic yet respectful to my family's values. We even joked about potential responses from my parents, lightening the mood despite the seriousness of our conversation. That weekend, we arranged for Alex to come over for dinner again, this time with the intent of introducing him as more than just a friend. The anticipation built within me as Sunday approached. Nerves danced in my stomach like butterflies taking flight. When Sunday evening arrived, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling inside me as we prepared for dinner together. Alex helped me set the table while we exchanged playful banter, his presence grounding me amidst the chaos brewing within. As we walked into the living room where my parents were already seated, my heart raced. Every beat echoed loudly in my ears as if announcing our arrival before we even spoke. "Hey everyone, this is Alex," I said boldly, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "Nice to meet you." Alex chimed in cheerfully, extending his hand toward my parents. My mother smiled politely, but her eyes flickered with uncertainty. My father's expression remained neutral, yet watchful, a familiar tension settling around us. Once more, like an unwelcome guest crashing our moment together, we sat down for dinner, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. As we navigated through small talk while waiting for an opening to delve deeper into our relationship. Finally, after dessert was served, my mother turned her gaze toward us again, this time her expression more curious than wary. "So how long have you two been dating?" she asked casually, but there was an edge beneath her tone that hinted at her desire for clarity. "About 2 months now," Alex replied confidently, his voice steady despite the weight of scrutiny bearing down upon him. "And how did you meet?" my father interjected, his tone neutral yet probing. A familiar dance unfolding before us once more as we recounted our story, sharing laughter-filled anecdotes about our first coffee date and subsequent adventures. I felt something shift within me. Each word spoken wove threads tighter around us, both binding us together amidst everything still unresolved lingering heavily around us. But then came the moment that changed everything. My mother leaned forward slightly, her brow furrowing again as she asked pointedly, "So, what does this mean for your future?" The question hung heavily in the air, a challenge wrapped tightly within concern, and I took a deep breath before responding. "It means that Alex is important to me, and I want him to be part of my life moving forward." Silence enveloped us then. It felt like time stood still as everyone processed what had just been said, the weight of acceptance hanging delicately between us, waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. Finally breaking through layers built up around hearts entwined tightly amidst swirling uncertainties, still waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. "I think it's wonderful that you've found someone who makes you happy," my mother said quietly after what felt like an eternity, a hint of warmth creeping back into her tone, a flicker of hope igniting within me once more. My father nodded slowly after another pause, his expression softening slightly as he added, "As long as you're happy, that's what matters most." Relief flooded through me like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It felt like finally stepping out from behind barriers erected out of fear alone, the weight lifting off shoulders finally free from burdens carried too long. That night marked a turning point, not just for our relationship, but also for how I viewed myself. Embracing who I was without hesitation or fear holding me back any longer. In the days and weeks that followed, I found myself growing more confident, not only in my relationship with Alex, but also within myself, learning to embrace vulnerability rather than shy away from it altogether. A journey filled with twists and turns, yet leading towards something beautiful waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together. As summer turned into fall, the leaves began changing colors outside, reflecting everything unfolding within too. A tapestry woven tightly by threads spun from joy mingled seamlessly alongside vulnerability, creating something real amidst everything still unresolved lingering heavily around us, both like smoke fading away, leaving only ashes behind. And so here we stood together hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing one thing for certain. Love wasn't just about finding someone who understood. It was about embracing every part of ourselves fully, including those pieces still waiting patiently ahead on paths not yet taken together.